So I've had this camera, the Canon XF400, for a couple of months now, and I've used it for several weddings, and I've used it for a few of these YouTube videos, and I've also just used it for shooting around, just for my own personal fun. And I just wanted to give you my thoughts about this camera. Stay right there. You're going to want to see this. Hi, I'm Mike Turner, your friendly filmmaker, and today we're talking the XF400, the Canon XF400, and my thoughts on this camera. Now, I got a lot of notes on this. I wrote a lot of notes and stuff. Like, I wrote up a whole review for it, and I'm just going to go through some of these points just so you guys who may be interested in this camera can have an idea of how it performs in certain situations. Now, primarily, for business, I do a lot of wedding shoots. So I shoot a lot of wedding videos. So, you know, that's live action, that's run and gun type of shooting. That's what I'm most versed in. Obviously, I do shoot some documentary work, some short films and things like that. But obviously, I probably wouldn't use this type of camera for more commercial short film type of work. But documentary, yeah, you could use this type of camera. But let me just say some of the things about this camera that I do like. You know, first and foremost, one, two, three. My head is itching like crazy. I'm getting bitten up by mosquitoes like over and over and over again. But anyway, so we're gonna try to get the hell out of here very quickly because my bald head can't take this abuse. First and foremost, one of the things I like the most about this camera is the image quality. It has exceptional image quality for a 1-inch sensor camera. It almost looks like you're shooting with a DSLR or a mirrorless camera in some situations. It really looks that good. Just a really, really nice image. And from what I understand, it uses the same processor that is in the C300 cinema camera. And I'm not surprised because it really does look very good. The other thing that I really like about it is the low light performance. Surprisingly, for a camcorder, it has excellent low light performance. I mean, you could take the gain like almost to the highest levels of 33 dB, which is, I guess, equivalent to, I don't know. That might be equivalent to like 1200, excuse me, not 1200, but 12,800 ISO. It might be equivalent to that. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But it's very high, and it still looks very good. It's not perfectly clear at those levels, but it's really clear for being at such a high level of gain. So I'm very impressed by that, especially because when I'm shooting weddings, I can't always control the light situation. So that's very nice to have. Two, or actually this is three now, I like the fact that it has a fixed lens. I mean, I shoot with a lot of cameras that don't, and sometimes the convenience of not having to swap lenses, especially when you're shooting live action, is pretty nice. So you have that fixed lens that has a very, very good zoom range. So it's like a 15 times zoom, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just double check, I can look at it. I'll tell you right now. So I think it says it right on the side. Yeah, 15 times zoom, which really can punch in very, very far if you need to. And you can still be pretty wide. I mean, you're not totally wide with this. I think it's like a 24 millimeter equivalent when you zoomed all the way out. But that's pretty decent for most things. So having that fixed lens and that zoom versatility is very nice. What else we got here? Of course, and it can shoot 4K 60p. That's something that I really don't use all that often, but it is nice to have that option when you do need it. So you can shoot 4K 60, and then you have built-in ND filters, which is always a nice thing to have in a camera. And you know, most of your professional camcorders are going to come with that built in, and you have 3 stages of ND. Just nice when you're shooting in the shade like this, but then all of a sudden you're out in the sun back there. You can just kind of punch on the ND filter and just knock down that light really quickly. And then I would say last, will just be having a handle. I've mentioned it before in other videos when it comes to other camcorders that I've used, but this handle is so convenient. I mean, one, you have zoom rocker on top, so you can zoom when you're holding it like this. But then you have all the audio controls here, so you can turn these up and down. You have the 2 XLR inputs that are built into the handle. So it's just really convenient. And it's just an easy way to carry the camera. Take it off of a tripod, put it on, it's just easier to hold. So that's like one of my favorite features about, you know, camcorders like this. So with all that being said, all the nice stuff, and that was about what? That's about 6 things, right? I'm getting bitten, man. I mean, things are, oh my God. Oh, I don't know if I'm gonna shoot out here again. But that, all that being said, that was about 6 things. I have about, let's see, 11 things that I don't like. So that kind of gives you an idea where this video is going. So let's start with the battery life. First and foremost, the battery life on this thing absolutely sucks. For a camcorder, when you plug in an extended battery and you're only getting like 2 hours, that's terrible. It's just absolutely insane. It is the crappiest battery life I've ever seen out of a camcorder. It's just terrible. You're lucky if you get an hour and a half. So, you know, I always have like 4 batteries with me and I'm swapping them back and forth, back and forth. You know, like I said, it's nice having the convenience of a fixed lens, so you don't have to swap lenses, but then you have to swap batteries. So you're still getting slowed down. So now I have a good fixed lens, but then a crappy battery that I got to constantly shift. So that really sucks. I think Canon could have did a better job with that. 2, and this is a very surprising one to me, and maybe I can remedy it by maybe reinstalling the firmware or something, but it's glitchy. It's very glitchy. There have been several times where I was shooting a wedding where I had to turn it off and turn it back on because it just freezes. The touchscreen just freezes on me. And it usually happens when I'm adjusting the white balance, the Kelvin white balance, it just freezes. And then the only way I can get out of that screen is I gotta shut the camera down and turn it back on. Very annoying. And just staying on that topic of white balance, the next thing that I don't like is that you cannot adjust the white balance when you're recording. That's just insane to me that you can't change that while you're actually recording. You have to stop recording just to change the white balance. You also cannot access the menu screen while you're recording. I have other professional camcorders that allow you to change settings in the menu while you're recording. So if I want to change my zoom speed on the handle or on the body, you can't do it. You just can't do it while you're recording. You have to shut it down, well, not shut it down, but you have to stop recording and then change it. And there's certain features like that, you know, are nice to be able to change while you're recording. So you can't do it with this camera. Okay, moving on. Number 4, and this one kind of irritates me as well. Well, they all irritate me, right? Because I don't like it. They give you customizable buttons. You have 5, but they limit what you can change those buttons to. I cannot change any of the buttons to toggle zebras or peaking on and off, which to me is insane. I don't understand why you can't change that. I can't toggle the buttons. I don't think I can toggle the button to work as a white balance preset. Obviously you can't, because you can't change it when you're recording anyway, so they didn't give you that option. It's just, I don't know. You know, limiting what I can change things to is just kind of annoying. So, a little squirrel running back and forth. Anyway. And also, there's very little you can change. Now, this is not a huge deal to me, but I know it might be a big deal to some. Obviously, we know that Canons have a very nice image just out of the camera. You don't really have to modify it because it just looks good, but maybe some people don't really like that Canon color and they want to modify the picture themselves and modify it in camera so that they don't have to color grade later on in post. But with this camera, there's not really that much that you can do to modify the image. They do give you the option to modify contrast and sharpness and saturation, but that's about it. You really can't change anything else. You're not going to be able to change your reds, your greens, the saturation in those independently. You can't do that. It's just not in this camera. So keep that in mind. If you're the type that wants to modify the picture a lot, nah, can't do it. Also, it's way too menu driven. You have to do a lot of things through the menu. Like I said, because you can't change the buttons to do whatever you want, then you have to go to the menus to change everything, and it's just slow. I mean, this is supposed to be a camcorder, so I think of it as a run and gun type of tool. I want to have the option to be fast, to customize buttons the way I want, to have more buttons, to have some switches and stuff. And it just doesn't have that. And just kind of staying on that subject, they call this the XF400, but if anybody has ever used the XF100 or 300, the bodies on those cameras are completely different from this one. They have all those buttons and switches that I'm talking about. This is not an XF, it's an XA. This is an XA body, and they called it an XF, and it's really not an XF camera. So it's kind of, I don't know why they did that. If you're gonna call it the XF400, really make it an XF400. Don't make it a XA400 and call it an XF. And just staying on that, they're making newer models of the same camera that they're calling XA. So now I think they have an XA40, XA50, XA55, something like that. And some of them are going to be the same type of body, but they're going to have a 1/2-inch sensor, so you can save a little bit of money because it's a smaller sensor. And then I think one of them, I think the XA55 maybe, or the XA50, is pretty much the same camera without the streaming capability. So you can save some money because it doesn't have that in it. So if you know you're not using streaming, you can get the lower model camera now and save a little money. Again, just kind of proving that this is an XA camera and not an XF. All right, moving on. Another thing too is I mentioned how much I like the audio handle, but I don't know if there's something wrong with mine, but I have to say that adjusting the handle, let's see if I get it to adjust on this. Adjusting the audio is usually very hard. It just doesn't turn very well, especially once you get past 5. It's just really hard to turn. I have to use my fingernail. I have to use my fingernails to really get in there and turn it. It's just very hard. So once you have it on a tripod or your monopod and you're trying to adjust your audio, you're shaking the hell out of the camera because it's so hard to adjust. I don't know. Moving on. What else? Oh, yeah. So the shotgun holder. You see how it's designed here. It's nice. It has this little dampening thing on there to dampen your sounds and stuff. That's cool. But when you try to put a light on this, it winds up hitting the mic because it's so close to the cold shoe mount. So it really makes it kind of impossible to mount a light on there. Yeah, that to me is just kind of a dumb design. Unless your light is really, really small, you can't put a light on there. And a lot of times I don't use on-camera lights, but sometimes I do because you just don't have a choice. And you just really can't do it with this one. Moving on. Let's see. We're now at number 9. And this one kind of sucks. It takes a real long time to boot this up. And I'll just show you because I think there's a battery in here. I'm gonna turn the camera on right now. It's on. And now we're ready to shoot. It takes that long for it to boot up. So like I said, the battery life sucks, so you're not gonna wanna keep this thing running, so you wanna turn it off to conserve battery. But then once you're ready to shoot, it takes like a full, whatever that was, 15, 20 seconds for it to start up. That's way too long, way too long. So that part kind of sucks. Moving on, now we're up to number 10. There aren't separate buttons for the iris controls. The iris, shutter, and iris, shutter, and gain. You don't have separate buttons. So you have to use this custom button to cycle through which one you want to adjust. And that really, really stinks. You get used to it, but I feel like it still makes me just a hair slower than if I had dedicated buttons for each one. And you know, my JVC LS300 and the Sony NX80 all have individual buttons for those things, buttons or switches to adjust those things. And I just find it to be extremely useful and fast. So I kind of hate that this doesn't. Just thought it would be worth mentioning. And lastly, and this one kind of surprises me, and it seems some people say that they don't have a problem with this, but I do. So this is supposed to have dual pixel autofocus, but to me it does not work as well as the dual pixel autofocus that comes in the DSLR or mirrorless cameras that Canon makes. So I used to own a 70D and the dual pixel autofocus was great. Right now I'm using dual pixel autofocus to do this video on the Canon M50, and you can see how well it just keeps me in focus no matter where I go. It's just tracking my face, and it does a really good job at it. This camera, it works kind of similar, but a lot of times I find that it loses the focus on faces, and then the screen just totally goes foggy, and I got to turn it off, and then I got to manually focus back on my subject. It just loses it, and it just can't find the focus. So it's really not as good as the other cameras that Canon makes. Can't tell you why. But anyway, that pretty much sums it up. There's my opinion, or the things that I like and what I don't like on the Canon XF400. With that all being said, for my purposes of doing run and gun shooting, I don't like the camera. I don't think it's very good for that. If you're doing more corporate style stuff where you're seating people down, you could do multiple takes, you got time to set the camera up, this is a great camera because, like I said, the image quality is excellent. There's a lot of good functionality in it. But if you're really under the gun and you're running around and you're trying to be quick, I don't really think this is the greatest camera for that. I think there's better options, and we already know of two of them because I've put them out on my channel before. The JVC LS300 is way better than this camera, and the Sony NX80 to me is better than this camera as well. If you want something that is a camcorder, I think both of those are better options. The Sony NX80's image quality is not quite as good as this one, but it's close. But the functionality of the NX80 blows this out the water, in my opinion. So there it is. Anyway, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. If any of you guys own either one of the cameras or any of the cameras that I just mentioned, let me know your thoughts about them. What other camcorders are you guys using that you think are better than this camera? Like, using one of the Panasonics, like C1000 or something, or whatever. I know they got that new CX350. I don't know if that's out yet or if it's coming. I think it's out. If anybody has that, I would love to hear what you think about it. Yeah, that's about it. Anyway, I'm Mike Turner. Thanks for watching, and I guess I'll see you soon.